Okay, I'd like to call to order the Citizen Advisory Committee of the Transportation Authority. First item on the agenda is if we have any public comment. Not seeing any member of the public. I rather doubt it. So we'll proceed next to the summary of actions. And if there are no corrections or additions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mark?
Second.
Michael? All right, it's moved and seconded to approve the summary of actions. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? They are approved. Okay, I'd like everybody to take a moment to review their entries in the attendance log. Oh, that's right, we haven't, the first time we've met this year. And also make sure your information is correct on the 2015 roster. And take note of the meeting schedules, which in this case will, for the next 3 months, will all be on the fourth Wednesday. So are there any corrections there?
The Pleasant Hill seat says vacant in the attendance log, but I'm sure you'll fix that soon. Thank you.
Okay, if that's completed, we'll move on to the review of the City of Oakley's calendar years 2012 and 2013 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. So if you would like to come forward. Introduce yourself for the committee.
Good evening, Mr. Smith, the chair. My name is Kevin Rohani. I'm the city engineer for City of Oakley.
And do we have any questions on the checklist or comments?
Kind of, rather than a question, actually, given the checklists that we've looked at and I've seen, this is one of the very few with regard to the housing element, where a city has. I mean, you are really in some small company in the amount of what you folks have done.
I'd just point out that we actually have a committee that sits and reviews the zoning of all the housing, and we're all over it when it comes to all the housing needs. Oakley is just all over it. I can't imagine that there'd be any questions.
I too looked at that housing and thought, is there anybody you're missing? Because you went from extremely low to moderate to high. You covered the whole gamut. I was impressed.
Yeah, in fact, recently we've had several hearings at the council level regarding that housing elements, and our approach has been very broad and trying to cover all elements of our housing, and generally, we've been able to, develop a support for the housing element throughout the community. So there was 2 months ago we had another approval. So I think our housing element probably may be an overachiever, as you said, one of the most robust housing elements that you'll see.
I guess the question that flows out of that, though, is what sort of mixes of funds were you was there, because it really has been bad times, and it really has been hard for communities that even if they had any want would have still had a lot of difficulty coming up with the resources. Mm-hmm. But even in this long period of recession, it seems like you folks had been able to tie together some resources from here, there, and everywhere and do stuff.
Correct. I think in City of Oakley, I have been City of Oakley a little bit over a year, but certainly talking to my colleagues who've been here a lot longer, we have a very friendly environment that has been nurtured over the years in terms of being able to develop projects, bring prospective clients and developers who would be interested to work with the city in these type of projects. And there's been a number of them that have been built probably over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So I think a lot of it is just how we engage with the private sector in terms of the larger housing developments that come in. There may be some agencies, some municipalities that are less accommodating. Not to say we're give everything away, but we want to work collaboratively on this type of project, make sure the type of projects that are built are what we call them an excellence in design, really representative of the community, and the few that we have are certainly, from our perspective and others who have seen it, model developments.
Yeah, I too was very impressed by the housing element, but and I'm not too familiar with the city of Oakley, so I'm wondering if you could answer. As we continue to move forward, one of the biggest ideas that the Transportation Authority likes to push is the idea for livable communities with the housing and the commercial and the residential, all together in a single area. I wonder if you could talk to that. Like, are you guys also attracting businesses? Are you attracting retail? Are you attracting all that so that, we can try hopefully to keep cars off the roads and keep everything on, in their own community?
Certainly. In fact, good point. We just recently, about a month ago, throughout 2014, City of Oakley, we've been working on what we call the visioning project for our downtown. And that visioning project was a very, again, collaborative process that would bring all elements from commercial, from housing, and retail together to rebuild the downtown. Those of you who have been to Oakley past 2 years, there's been a nucleus of downtown created from City Hall, the amphitheater, a lot of momentum. So this visioning project laid out a blueprint basically for City of Oakley to really develop along that concept to bring the commercial, residential components together. We've converted our downtown from back in the day used to be the old Highway 4 that ran through the town. Now, obviously, with the Highway 4 being built separately, we're making our downtown to a more pedestrian-friendly environment, and a lot of elements has been put in, and hopefully, again, depending on the funding that becomes available over the future years or decades, our downtown will be transformed to very mixed-use type of a community.
I was going to ask, how has the rerouting of Highway 4 impacted business development and just the success of the businesses that are along the old route of Highway 4 along Main Street?
I probably couldn't answer that question specifically in terms of the dollars and cents, but from what we have seen, certain, the rerouting of Highway 4 instead of going through Brentwood, the Lone Tree Corridor, there's just a synergy that has created a separate type of businesses out there. In Oakley, with the Highway 4 being moved away, we're more focused, more small boutique type of business and establishments. The core is at our Civic Center campus that we built. It just started about 3 years ago now. First phase of it has been completed as we speak. We're working with Caltrans on a grant opportunity to get some federal funding to complete another block. So we go block by block, rebuild downtown completely from grounds up, streets, streetscape, all components. And Oakley has a program to work with the merchants to rehabilitate their businesses. There's a lot of older, kind of more rural community, older buildings that we work with them to do facade improvements if they want, also help them if they want to have more wholesale turnover, completely tear it down and build brand new buildings. So we're just working block by block, working with the merchants to promote those type of businesses. But in terms of the impact of it, financial impact, I don't have that data to tell you kind of before and after what has been the changes. But the thing has been very positive in downtown Oakley. It's been, from what we have seen over the past year, is the level of interest that people want to come and set up shop there. We had the Republic of Cake had a shop there, was there for about 2 years. And recently, due to family issues, they decided to close out. So their building was vacant. So our economic development manager was marketing it, and we had a lot of takers from various establishments. Mr. Pickles' sandwich shop is moving there next month. So there's been a lot of interest. So I think as our downtown kind of gets rehabbed and has a much refined look and feel to it, people want to come, and from what we've seen, there's level of interest. So just, again, we work hand in hand with the business community to rehabilitate older businesses and rebuild them.
So
we just opened the Veterans Memorial, which is gorgeous, and also we're planning on getting a library built. That's in the works. Mm-hmm. So and across the street, I want to say dollar store, but what is that? It's not dollar store.
Grocery outlet.
Grocery outlet.
A brand new grocery outlet is being built that I think they're going to open it towards end of next month.
And we have Carpaccio's and the burrito place.
La Costa.
La Costa. Oh, it's so busy there. It's unreal.
Well, for instance, the grocery outlet, which is a brand new building, used to be an old building. I don't, Michael, you may know what.
It was an old shopping center, an old grocery store.
Old
but it
building, it got completely torn down and a brand new building. So that's how we're rehabbing the old downtown. We built a new amphitheater, which is very unique for a small community. And this summer, our council has allocated funding. There's a lot of events to be built and staged at the amphitheater. So we're using our downtown as our core to bring both the residential community and the business community.
So as I read the report, it was pretty clear to me that Oakley favors businesses with reduced fees and looking at different ways to help people, businesses with construction. I was curious, your economic development manager is looking to bring in commerce. Are you looking to bring in manufacturers? What kind of commercial business are you looking at?
In the city of Oakley, we have room for a wide range of establishments, from manufacturing. Probably downtown wouldn't be conducive to manufacturing facilities, but we have some sections west of the town near the Antioch border, along Main Street, large parcels of land near the old DuPont factory. That's they're zoned for manufacturing industrial facilities. Those are a lot of properties that are available. So we look for opportunities to bring businesses in general. Certainly in our downtown, it's more catered to more retail type of businesses. Commercial, we work at various levels to bring from manufacturing to industrial to small retail to the town.
So I'm also interested in the different different housing that you're looking to continue to build. And how do you know what percentage of your Oakley population is working in your immediate area? Because you have made mention that you've got housing and you're looking to give that information to commercial businesses so they can see what your population consists of. My guess was that, okay, so that potential employers would say, I've got a labor base right close by. It would make sense to me to go ahead and build a factory or build my business or do another franchise here because I've already got X people that I can tap into. What percentage of your population is involved with labor in that area?
That percentage I don't have. I can certainly find out and send for the committee.
Yeah, I'd like to know because it brings me to my next consideration. You were talking about extending your public transportation. And so I'm wondering, so this public transportation gets the people from their homes to work, or is it from their homes to BART?
I think right now, short term would be to BART. As you know, BART has been extended along Highway 4 to Antioch. So it would be more along that route right at the short term, depending on how the level of growth is. Right now, Oakley has a population of slightly under 40,000. If the forecast hold true and the growth continues, will be 50, 60,000. Certainly, there's a lot of room for growth in city of Oakley. We have a lot of land that's available for subdivision construction. We're working with a number of developments along what we call the East Cyprus corridor. Literally runs into the delta, and that area right now there's a development, about 560 houses being built. There's, several thousand houses are destined to be built out there. So to your question, a prospective large business who will look at Oakley, where if I set up shop here, where is my workers are going to be? So there are certainly opportunities there. Right now, I know a lot of people commute because they commute to the rest of the Bay Area. They live in Oakley and they commute.
So I would like for you to consider that when you continue to expand your housing units, to keep that in mind, that if you're casting that net out to extremely low incomes, and I applaud you, you might want to look at, they need transportation and they need a bus that takes them to work, maybe not necessarily to BART, but as your area continues to grow, and I see that happening, you may want to make sure that you offer them an opportunity to get from their home to work or close enough to work, and that the buses run on a schedule that's convenient for their work times.
Currently, there's the Tri-Delta Transit runs right through the middle of Oakley and right near the low-income housing. It's walking distance to several bus stops. I use it, and it's the 300, the 380, the 390 something, and the 300 is an express bus that goes right to BART, and it's slick. And I think they're going to rebuild, or they've redone a couple of the bus stops, and they're upgrading them all the time. So I think in the short term, we have really good public transit connections, and in the long term, it'd be easy to upgrade them. And I know Tri-Delta Transit was voted one of the best transit systems in the country, and I would agree with that right now.
Just one other
would
question.
also expect-
I'm sorry. Steve, you can ask one other question?
Excuse me?
Can I ask another question? Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Just out of curiosity, because I know that, of course, Oakley has a rich agricultural heritage, and you've got some really wonderful old vine Zinfandel grapes out there. I mean, is there some type of agricultural protection zone or district for some areas, or is that just?
I don't know, but I do know that we've got some private vineyards and wineries with the old growth. And I know that one person has applied and got approved for a permit for a wine tasting facility, but they don't have the money to build it. There's a whole lot of old growth vineyards there. Even the Klein family still has some there. That's right across the street from where I live. And there is a group that is, and I don't know the name of it or who they are. I know Kevin Romick knows who they are. But they have taken some of the vineyards where they've made developments where the vineyards were, and they've moved the vineyards over to another spot. So there's at least a citizens group that is dealing with that, but I don't know if there's an agricultural protection thing or not. But it is kind of cool. We have lots of old growth vineyards everywhere in Oakley.
Sounds like a good motto, protect the vineyards.
There's a big push to do that. We have wine tasting once a year at the Oakley Festival that we had, and it's always good. The local vintners come out there and bring their wines.
With respect to the public transportation out there, I would expect when EBART goes into revenue service in 2017, Tri-Delta, if it has a hub at all, right now it's the Pittsburgh Bay Point BART station, which is the end of the line. When EBART goes in, I would expect that hub would generally move to the EBART station area, which would probably improve coverage in that area somewhat.
Actually, it's already there. They already stopped there.
Yeah, I know they stopped there, but I think we'll see quite a bit of a route and schedule realignment when that station opens. Right now, that's scheduled for revenue service in 2017. Are there any further questions or comments? If not, I'll let our representative from Oakley make the motion.
I move that we accept the City of Oakley's Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist.
Actually, and that's that is the recommend approval to the
Yes.
authority. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And our final major agenda item is a report on the status of the draft final 2014 countywide transportation plan update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, CAC members. Well, I was looking at the record of your past discussion topics, and I see we've talked about the countywide plans many times in the past. For those of you who are new here tonight, my name is Martin Engelman, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Planning at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and also the Project Manager for the 2014 update to the Countywide Transportation Plan. So I see 2 years ago in February we talked about launching the 2014 Countywide Transportation Plan. There was a presentation in December 2013 about the vision goals and current issues for the 2014 Countywide Transportation Plan. February, a year ago in 2014, we told you about the results of a public opinion survey that was taken regarding transportation in preparation for the 2014 CTP. We went over the action plans in May 2014. Talked about the draft CTP, which was issued in early August. We had a meeting, your meeting in July, we talked about that. And last time I was here, I think, was September 2014 when we reviewed the progress on the public outreach. So I'm here today to just give you an update of where we are. And in your packet, there is an excerpt from the plan, the executive summary as it was taken to the Technical Coordinating Committee. The plan itself is about 500 pages, and in the modern age, we're not printing it, but you can download it. The latest version is up on the Technical Coordinating Committee's archive from their last meeting, and we're also going to upload a new version this week, which will be brought to the Planning Committee for adoption. The plan is expected to be adopted by the authority on March 18th, 2014. So we are just about 3 weeks out from final adoption. Some of the changes that we made to the plan since you saw the draft, they're in response to the 34 comment letters we received. And we heard a lot of comments about people not knowing who we are. They might know who Caltrans is, they might know who Metropolitan Transportation Commission is, but they don't know who CCTA is. And so we added some text about who we are and what our mission is. The vision and goals and strategies have been substantively revised based upon comments received, and we've been going through that with the authorities planning committee. I think they're stabilizing now. We have a good set of goals and strategies. There was comments that we should emphasize more the requirements for maintenance, maintaining what we have. So we've added sections about maintaining local streets. The technology section has been beefed up. There's a new acronym in here called CV/AV. It stands for Connected Vehicle, Autonomous Vehicle, and those are the second and fourth stages of getting to a fully autonomous vehicle. We start with connecting the vehicles to one another, and we end with fully autonomous vehicles sometime in the future. I was recently driving around a 2014 Toyota Camry and realized that it actually had some infrastructure to vehicle technology in it, and that it says on the dashboard what the speed limit is. If you're going down I-80, it has a little sign on the dashboard that says speed limit 65. That information is actually coming from its navigation system, not from the highway, but that's the general idea, that you could get all kinds of messages in your car through connected vehicle and infrastructure to vehicle communications. So there's a graph in here, figure E5 on page 2.2-21 of your packet. It's attracted a lot of attention. We've gotten a lot of compliments about this, and it is the SB, the AB 32 and Executive Order S305 and B 1612 to reduce greenhouse gases in the state of California. And I think the S stands for Schwarzenegger. He passed one in 05, or he signed one in 05, that we should be down at 80% below 1990 by the time we get to 2050. And then Governor Brown, the B in B16, signed one in 2012 saying that the same thing should apply to transportation. There is a lot more emphasis on the 2014 plan about greenhouse gas emissions than we had in the 2009 plan. The issue of sustainability and creating a sustainable community strategy was kind of just hitting the streets when we started the 2009 plan. So we're doing more work to look at greenhouse gases in this 2014 plan. we've added information about Senate Bill 743, which is legislation that recently passed that will eliminate the use of level of service as a significant impact in a environmental impact document. Everybody familiar with the term level of service for traffic? So level of service, sir. Welcome, by the way. Is this your first meeting? Welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
J.P. McDermott from the town of Danville.
From Danville, okay. Level of service is kind of the letter grade rating system we use to assess the performance of traffic, both on the open road, on the freeway, and at traffic signals. And essentially, it's just like grades A, B, and C are okay. D is faltering, E is congested, and F is failure. So we've been using that for a long time, and cities throughout California have been using it for a long time to assess the traffic impacts of new development. But we're shifting, looks like the state is shifting from looking at congestion to actually looking at more at greenhouse gas emissions and at vehicle miles traveled. That is the new emphasis. We have 5 regional committees, West, Central, East, and in Southwest there are 2, La Miranda and Tri-Valley. They've each completed their action plans for routes of regional significance, and they've each forwarded those to the authority for adoption. That's actually the big volume 2 of our document. It's 5 action plans. They're 50 to 100 pages each, and that sets the goals and objectives and performance measures for the system at the sub-area level, and then we knit those 5 plans together to create our countywide transportation plan. If you've ever wondered how much money Measure C and Measure J generate, the subtotal on page 2.2-29 says, all told, the past and future revenues will be about $3.8 billion, and these are in year of expenditure dollars. And if we include the leverage funds on Measure C and J, we've been able to invest a total of $6.5 billion in transportation through the local sales tax and adding in regional and federal and state funds. So $6.5 billion may sound like a big number, but when we get to all of the unfunded projects, many of which are shown on this map on figure E8, we find that we have a significant shortfall in funding. This map is actually in red and green, and if you looked at your black and white version, we're trying to save money and not print too many color copies. You can see it on the web in color, but the table itself speaks to that, and that the total cost of all the projects that we have in our countywide plan at this point, all the projects these are capital projects for highways, capital projects for transit, for bicycle and pedestrian, transportation for livable communities, park and ride lots, arterials, roadways. The cost of all those now is estimated to be about $12 billion, and it's actually it's floated around a little bit as we add new projects and cross off completed ones through the process of developing this draft plan. But we think we're at about $12 billion, give or take $1 billion, and the total revenues estimated to offset that are $3.4 billion. So the shortfall is upwards of $8 billion, and that's real money, or a lot of money, and that's in constant 2014 dollars. That is not an escalated cost. So, what we plan to do with this plan is after the authority adopts it, we're going to look at that $8 billion shortfall, look at all the projects, and start to run them through the paces, find out which of those projects perform well and which don't, and find out what the public is interested in terms of new projects, and then try to find some funding. So in addition to projects, we also have programs, and programs are things like keeping BART running, operations and maintenance for BART, operations and maintenance for WestCat, for Tri-Delta Transit, for County Connection, for AC Transit. And so those don't involve improvements to the system. Those just involve keeping steady where we are. So maintaining local streets and roads, I believe, is a program that's in here. And overlaying the freeways, we have some projects like that. And then just keeping BART running and replacing the rail cars, not buying new rail cars, but replacing the old rail cars. All of those programs add up to about $17 billion in funding. So we got $12 billion in projects, $17 billion in programs. So for Contra Costa, over a 25-year period, using the time horizon at 2040, we're looking at $30 billion for transportation to maintain what we have, to keep everything operating, and to build new projects that we think will help improve the transportation system. Now, the $17 billion in programs is actually mostly funded, because the way these programs are driven, we ask BART, what does it take to maintain your system? And they tell us, it costs $600 million a year to run BART, and Contra Costa is, one of the three counties, so we figure it's $200 million a year to run BART, and Contra Costa multiply by 25, and you've got your estimate for BART. What is that, about $5 billion? And then there are other expenses as well. But this $17 billion is essentially funded. And so the question is, what improvements do you want to make to your program? So if you wanted to expand bus service in Central County, for example, buy new buses, run more buses, add drivers, improve the frequency, the program cost for buses would go up. Simple as that. If you wanted to run more BART trains, if you wanted to improve the Safe Routes to School programs, where we go out and talk to the schools and such, all of that would increase the cost of programs. So a big part of what we'll be doing in the next year or so is figuring out what programs we want to build up or expand. And so we'll hopefully the authority will adopt the countywide plan at their March meeting on the 18th. And then from there, we will go into looking at the shortfall and developing priorities and trying to find funding sources, hunting around for $8 billion. We probably won't find $8 billion, but we'd be happy to find 2 or 3. And that could be through any variety of sources, including the possibility of extending the Measure J sales tax or increasing the tax from a half cent to a penny. There's also things like the regional gas tax. There's a possibility, I think, in Sacramento they were talking about increasing the state gas tax the past few days. So we'll keep an eye on those, and we'll hear about that in the future. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Martin, one thing I just read, they actually are looking at reducing the state gas tax. In fact, that was what I believe the State Board of Equalization voted on, because they were complaining that because of that very convoluted arrangement that the state legislature dealt with a few years ago to kind of plug the holes, that they felt they had to actually reduce the gas tax, which seems like a terrible idea to me.
Right, it's kind of ironic, but the reduction in the cost of gas has reduced the total revenues, and so the sales tax calculation, and there's this old spillover formula that they have to account for. So I think the tax is going to go down by 6 cents based on that calculation. But I also heard recently there's a move afoot to just look at the possibility of increasing the state gas tax, which is now at 18 cents a gallon, and it hasn't been increased since 1990 or 91.
We've got some rumblings in the paper about, given the realities of more economical cars and a decline in the amount of driving that a number of people are doing, that making that fee, rather than being necessarily tied, I'll say solely to a gas tax, but make it actually a vehicle miles traveled. And as you were talking a moment ago about the little black boxes on your Camry, all that information about vehicle miles traveled is stored right in those little black boxes. So it's actually really easy to get to should somebody decide to do that.
That was, and I was just going to ask the question, where are we at with the road use tax? I know that there were issues about privacy, I think, that they were trying to deal with. Do you know anything about the road use tax?
Well, it's certainly being talked about, and the point that Member Sustick just made about the electric vehicles and the more efficient vehicles, that's been widely discussed, and for that reason, several states are looking at a vehicle miles traveled tax. Washington and Oregon are experimenting with that. We haven't had a full-blown pilot in California just yet, but I think we're on the verge of trying some pilot programs to see how it works. And it's true, the consumption of gas in California, back in 2005, it was about 14 billion gallons a year, and it's through the Great Recession and also changing habits of the Y generation, the total consumption has dropped down to about 13 billion. So it's something that's been going up for a long time. It's finally leveling out and even dropping. But 13 billion gallons a year of gas, if you just ballpark estimate, assuming that gas is inelastic. Adding 10 cents would generate over $1 billion a year for the state coffers to help maintain and improve our roadways.
So, Martin, a subject matter that's near and dear to my heart, which is bus service. And so when you said you're going to be looking at the shortfalls, are you going to be looking at bus service and how it either improves the community or is ineffective? And when I say ineffective, I've got to go back to the city of Lafayette, and those buses are running empty because they're not in sync with when kids are going to school and when people are going to work. So is there any kind of study that's going to be done by that? In the past, when there were the bus to BART service, when the bus got to the BART station and then the BART train came about 5 minutes later, the buses were full. But now they come once an hour. Who uses them? Why even bother? And it's a lot of money. Anybody going to be looking at that when you say shortfalls?
Well, the shortfall, when we talk about the shortfall, it doesn't include the subsidy, the public subsidy for operating the bus system, and it doesn't include increasing the service. So what we would want to do is meet with the transit agencies and with the stakeholders and with members of the public and try to find out what kind of bus service they need, what kind of bus service they want, and determine if there should be a program to improve the bus service. The bus service has actually been cut back. Go back 7 years, it's been steadily cut back, and only recently has service been restored. And a lot of the agencies are interested in just restoring the service levels that they used to have, because they've been cut back significantly because of the cuts in STA funding. So Sacramento cut their sources; they had to cut their services. And when they cut their services, then people tend to depend less. It's, it's a downward spiral. The less frequency, the less use.
But is this a
And less convenience.
scheduling issue or a service issue?
It's a scheduling issue.
Okay, so that sounds like a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of combination of both. So let's say, for instance, Contra Costa Transit is allotted a certain amount of money. Can they then look at their budget and say, but we still need another $100 million? Do they have the opportunity then to go out and do a bond to supplement?
If they have a revenue source, if they have a constant revenue source, but I don't think they can bond on fare box. And I don't believe they can bond on the state and federal money that they receive, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to check into that.
Okay, and then the last one is I'm looking at the map here, and the projects that are funded, and I'm looking at a BART extension to Hercules. And above that, there's the Capital Corridor station at Hercules. So is that, I thought there was a one that there were already, which is Capital Corridor.
You have the luxury
Figure-
of looking
figure eight.
at a color copy?
No.
I was going to pull up a color copy on that.
I was just curious as to if this is a recommendation. Because I think there's a station at Hercules already, a Cap Corridor.
Oh, yeah. I believe that if you look at the colored map, that's probably in red. It's unfunded,
Oh, okay.
the W BART extension.
Martin, I've got a question about on the programs, looking at Rail Rapid Transit, that's almost half of the budget. Can you tell me a little bit what's included in that program or programs? And if it's in here, if you could just point me to it, but.
It's broken down in volume 3, and that is the cost of operating and maintaining the transit system. And so some of that is BART. I believe that also includes a portion of capital corridors. So, and I think in the most recent update, we've looked more closely at that Rail Rapid Transit line item, and we found that some of those costs are actually capital improvements, and so we are in the process of shifting anything that's a capital improvement from programs up to projects.
Okay.
But I don't know how much that number comes down yet. The final plan, these numbers are going to shake around a little bit. But as I said, if you just look at a third of the BART cost per year, $600 million a year to operate BART, and we're a third of the BART system or more, really. And it's over 25 years, $200 million a year. We're right there. We're at $5 billion.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then the bus companies are, depending on which one, the bus companies are $500 million to over $1 billion. I think AC Transit is over $1 billion. But this is simply the cost of operating those systems.
So it's operating expenses.
It's operation and maintenance and keeping things where they are. So if a rail car wears out, BART has to buy a new rail car at $3 million. That's that's in there,
Okay.
replacement. But if
Thank
they're
you.
buying more cars than what they have in their current fleet, that would be a capital investment.
Does that include wages?
Yes.
Okay,
It
thank you.
includes the cost of the driver. My understanding is running a bus costs about $100 an hour. In total, fuel, driver, bus, overhead, everything.
Learning a lot here.
Well, Hercules and Richmond, they're part of a study for potential BART extension roughly paralleling I-80. That's kind of coming into the study phase.
Yeah, they're opening up $1 million study in West County to look at transit along the I-80 corridor, including possible light rail transit or extension of BART, all kinds of options in that study.
Any further questions or comments by members of the committee? If not, thank you, Martin. I know this has been a large and long-running project to get this
It has,
update
and
done.
thank you very much for your attention. And I'd invite you, if you do have any comments, either as well as individuals, or if the CAC would like to comment on the final plan, you have an opportunity to bring your comments to the Planning Committee meeting this coming Wednesday, March 4th, or to the Authority meeting on March 18th.
One more thing, I don't think you mentioned it specifically, but I know you mentioned about this plan integrating more of the greenhouse gas considerations, but also wasn't there kind of somewhat of a shift toward raising the importance of transit versus highway construction in this plan?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. We've incorporated, in fact, the Sustainable Communities strategy that was developed by MTC and ABAG, which they created some land use assumptions for the Bay Area that involve putting about 70% of new growth into so-called priority development areas, which are near transit stations. And in so doing, they managed to meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets set by the Air Resources Board. And so our plan incorporates those land use assumptions.
Okay, well, we'll move on to
Mr. Chairman,
reports.
Mr. Chairman, this is an action item, but I think if you just accept my report, that would be perfectly adequate.
Oh, yes. Do I hear a second? Okay. All right, to accept the report, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimously. Moving on to reports, I've distributed report of the last 3 authority board meetings. We had one cancellation, and of course, we kind of swap ends in December, so there have been 3 authority board meetings since we last met. I won't go into this discussion in detail, answer any questions. In general, if you look at this, especially if you look at it over multi-months, you kind of see the progression of certain projects as they move through and certain planning activities. On the planning side, of course, the big thing has been the Countywide Transportation Plan update. But there are some studies going on. There's a preliminary discussion on transit options, or high-capacity transit option along this 680 corridor, which I think is just being assembled at this point. A little further down the road has been the study on a BART extension along the I-80 corridor heading up from Richmond on up. Several major projects that have been, progressing through the pipeline. Starting work on the getting hot lanes going, high occupancy vehicle lines going on the I-680 corridor, and filling in the gaps in the carpool lanes. There's been some continued work on, I think they're now moving to the landscaping stage on the auxiliary ramps that they have completed along the 680 corridor, and beginning of some consideration of landscaping for the Highway 4, at least the portions that have been completed. And out in East County, they're really coming, I think, close to having full funding for what we call the Balfour Road interchange, which may very likely be the last interchange constructed for some time. That will pretty well, along with the completion of the Highway 4 widening project, pretty well have freeway or near freeway style all the way into all the way into Brentwood down to the southern border. So is there any other questions I can answer for the committee? Yes.
Would you please tell me more about this filling in the gaps with the carpool lane? I don't think I understand that.
There's still major gaps, particularly from the Walnut Creek area on up to the bridge, to the Martinez Bridge. Right now, I think they end somewhere in the neighborhood of Rudgear Road. So they are not only working on getting that completed so that there will be carpool lanes all the way, really, from the southern boundary of the county to the northern boundary of the county on I-680. And they're also beginning to look at what it would take to also make them high occupancy vehicle lanes, so that, if you're be a lot like they have over the grade right now, this is an old grade, where, if you have less than the requisite number of people, you can occupy that lane and pay a toll through your transponder. I don't think there's, well, as Highway 4 widening is completed, the carpool lanes will come on stream as each segment is completed, and the metering has already gotten started out there. I think they may intend eventually to do HOV lanes out there as well, tolling, but I don't think that's really moving forward at this time. And I think the main focus is on the I-680 corridor. So I generally, it's been on an informal basis for a few years now. since I attend the authority board meetings, I've reported back to this committee on what's going on at the board level. Good way of getting some idea of the flow of things through the system.
Thank you for doing that.
What?
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, I have one comment also in addition to the reports. With the introduction of the requirement for committee members filling out a Form 700, we've lost a couple of good people, which I regret. And I've talked to some commissioners, I've talked to Randy, I've talked to legal counsel. I understand the motivation for this. I don't really agree with legal counsel's ruling that we have that kind of impact on the eventual passage of legislation at the authority board level that should trigger this. And I've gotten nowhere. I'm going to take it up when I can with Assemblyman Frazier. I think this is somewhat of an undermining of the concept of a citizens committee. It adds another bar to citizen participation, and I'm not sure that a committee that was constituted as this one was, that really is good public policy. So I don't know whether we could get some kind of language tweak that would say citizens committees specifically formed to provide a independent oversight are exempt or what. But I will be following up with this. I deal with a lot of different councils in various governmental councils, and some of them are pretty conservative and they play it safe, and that's generally been the case here.
Yeah, in Orinda, we've kind of lost some folks because all commissioners and committee members are required to fill out the Form 700. Yeah. There are some folks who just do not want to do that. So it kind of makes your pool a little shallower.
Yeah, well, I see it for commissioners, but again, committee members, they're just going on the fact that generally if we recommend approval, things get approved. But frankly, I think that's correlation rather than causality.
Stephen, a similar requirement's been placed on Meals on Wheels drivers. It's not Form 700, but they have a lot of reports we have to fill out now, which is totally absurd. We've lost a number of drivers because of that.
Well, and I can agree with taking the yearly training or biennial AB 1234 training, but the Form 700 I think is a little too far. So anyway, we'll see how that develops. Any other member or staff comments?
But quick, okay, just very quickly, so Yolanda had earlier talking about buses. Kind of an interesting thing that's kind of on the horizon is having an all-electric heavy-duty bus with reasonable range, over 100 miles, for example. And the opportunity, the hybrid buses that are now out there are extremely expensive, somewhere between $750,000 and $1.23 million. Jettisoning a $50,000, $60,000 diesel motor would be a great thing. But kind of the thing that opens up is if you had, with swappable batteries, you can solar panels charge the batteries during the day, swap them out at night, and have the buses back on the street. And the buses do use a lot of fuel, so that would be a real. that kind of comes through. There's a real expense, of course, in the buy-in of buying the solar panels, the blah, 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 extra set of batteries, but you're right at zero. Once the infrastructure is in place, you're right at zero GHG production.
The other thing I didn't mention that it's been a theme mostly mentioned in the executive director's comments. They're really moving forward as fast as they can with making arrangements with various vehicle manufacturers to really use the former Naval Weapons Station as a test bed for connected vehicle, autonomous vehicle research. They've talked to Google, they've talked to Mercedes, they've talked to some of the other vendors because they can duplicate a lot of situations in a fairly safe manner. So that's a pretty active program that staff is working on. And the authority board and staff have also been working on various ride-sharing programs, all sorts of things to, increase the options for people getting around. Okay, the only other thing I want to say is for our new members, welcome. And there is a stamp on the back table to validate your parking ticket. And also, there is a sign-in sheet that you should sign in to receive your mileage reimbursement.
Chair Smith, may I make a comment? The drum that I keep beating on the bus service is really because it, as a private citizen, it just frosts me to see those buses drive by empty. When, how do you get that? You fill them up by making sure that those buses run from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and you get the school kids and you get the commuters, and they won't do it. Why? Because they're paid to not do it, and so they don't. And then you've got this bus that goes up, really? Upper Happy Valley Road, really? And then you have another bus that goes from Lafayette BART down Olympic Boulevard, really? So that's why someday maybe people will, want to shut me up. But also, Chair Smith, do you mind if our new members introduce themselves?
No, I don't know where my head was at the beginning of the meeting.
So I'm J.P. McDermott, and I'm representing the town of Danville and St. Mary's College.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah, I've like Yolanda, a former MBA alum and on the Graduate Business Council up there, and also on the Alumni Board of Directors. And I work next door. I'm a financial planner with the premier client group of MetLife.
My name is Malad Larkin. Second, I'm representing Antioch, former resident of San Francisco, former city commissioner, two-time city commissioner, where I served as the president of the Southeast Facilities Commission, and the last commission was San Francisco Housing Authority Commission. So I've worked for 3 railroads in a past life. Santa Fe Railroad in Chicago, Southern Pacific Railroad here, and Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern Railroad in Joliet, Illinois, in the capacity of railway clerk, telegrapher, and coordinator. So just a little transportation experience, but leaving San Francisco and building in moving to Antioch over the past 14 years, I understand that committees like these are quite welcomed in our city. I hope I can bring a little experience, the little experience that I have, to work with all of you guys, and that I can garnish some experience from you to help make Antioch much better, because it's a lot of growth going on in Antioch right now. I have a lot of catching up to do, a lot of research to do. I see our highways are widening, our infrastructure is getting a lot better, and with the building of the expansion of BART, it's bringing a lot of new people, it's a lot of new problems, but also opportunity for a lot of progress. So that is the reason I decided that I wanted to be part of this team. When I first moved to Antioch, I came out there to get away from everything like this that I could. You know, I mean, I've served over 40 years in some type of government, and just wanted to come to Antioch and, you know, sit in my backyard. But seeing the way that the city is, that city needs all the help that it can get, because I think it's growing faster than what people realize. And the economics of that city has changed a great deal. And not only that, the ethnic makeup of the city has changed a great deal, and that brings a lot of new problems. And with the growth, again, of BART and other things in the city, it's a lot of help needed. So thank you for letting me, you know, vent a little bit.
Thanks. Also, since we have new members, I just thought to point out the maximum number of microphones that can be hot at a time is 4. So if you're not looking to be recognized or to speak, make sure your microphone is off. Okay, we don't have any correspondence or news clippings. Any suggestions about future agenda items? If not, I'll declare the meeting adjourned.